I'd like to call the Board of Education and Business Committee meeting for Tuesday, September 26th to order. We respect they acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people. Our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Is there any changes or additions to that agenda? Thank you, Director. Trustee Doman and Trustee Barr. You guys are moving and seconding that?
Trustee Doman, Trustee Barr. Okay.
Making sure you're awake. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carried.
Point of order, Chair.
Somebody run into
Minutes.
humor.
Of May 23rd, 2017.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded by DeGroot.
Trustee DeGroot. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Action list. Who is speaking to the action list? Mr. Allen, vote.
Board communications goals in progress with our new communications director, Katie, or communications specialist.
What's your title? Goddess.
And coming out of the strategic planning process, yes, we do call her that.
The boss.
Amongst other things. And reviewing the student reporting, communicating student progress policy. We have that in our list of policy.
Any questions of staff on those? None. Petitions and delegations are on the stage. No comments on education, business, and operations.
Thank you.
We have two guests with us.
We do. Today we're joined by Darren Freer in the corner and Todd Troyer at the end of the table, who are from the firm Collins Barrow Victoria, which are the district's auditors. They'll be walking the committee through the 2016-2017 financial statements. And before they begin, I have a few comments and thank yous to make. First is to inform the board that the objective of the financial statements is to provide information to the reader about the school district's financial position, performance, and changes in financial position. The district's year-end balances at June 30th, 2017 are compared to the prior year's actual. So it's actually the budget that was adopted in May of 2016. So some of the variances that you're going to see in the financial statements are larger than normal because of increased enrollment and other factors. The statements are a consolidation of three funds: the operating, special purpose, and capital funds. They are supported by accompanying schedules and notes. So there are schedules to these statements which are specific to each fund, which provide the reader with additional information. Now, many people were involved in the preparation of these statements and supporting the auditors while they were here in June for the preliminary work, as well as in August for approximately 2 weeks. So big thank you to Karen, who led the preparation of the statements this year and worked many evenings and weekends to get them ready on time. So thank you very much. The district year end is June 30th, and the auditors typically come in just after the August long weekend. So that's a very compressed amount of time. I know from experience how much work that is, so I really thank Karen and Gina, who worked on the notes to the statements, and payroll and accounting departments, who were also part of pitching in on the working papers and the variance analysis. Some quick highlights is this was a year of enrollment growth. It was a year when the enrollment growth exceeded expectations. So some of the variances in the statements are due to increased staffing levels, which also have corresponding revenue due to that enrollment growth. So remember a figure of around 150 last September. That's reflected. Special needs designations increased by almost 43% over the prior year. So there's related expenditures and revenue to that are explained in the variances. The district received additional grants after the budget was adopted. They include transportation grant, return of the administrative savings, as well as $50 per student learning grant. In our special purpose funds, there were also new monies. Those related to coding and curriculum implementation, as well as a priority measures, which was an interim response to the Supreme Court of Canada decision. So about $800,000 approximately came in for that. $4.9 million was expended on capital projects. Major capital projects included the building envelope project at Ecole Mount Prevost, almost $2 million, or over $2 million. Roofing replacements at Cole, Cobble Hill, as well as Maple Bay, some bus acquisitions, vehicles, and regular school upkeep through the annual facilities grant funding. So with that, I will pass it over to Darren and Todd to present on the financial statements and the audit findings.
Okay, thanks, Jason. First page I'd like everyone to have a peek at is the independent auditor's report. One more, there we go. And so this is our report addressed to you, the board, and you will see there that it states that the district has prepared their financial statements in accordance with the accounting requirements of section 23.1 of the Budget Transparency and Accountability Act of British Columbia. And the financial statements are the responsibility of the board's management, and our responsibility as auditors is to express an opinion on those financial statements based on our audit. Our opinion states the financial statements have been prepared in accordance with the accounting requirements of section 23.1 of the Budget Transparency and Accountability Act, and this requires that government transfers from the province for the acquisition of capital assets be booked into revenue on the same basis as the related amortization expense. This is consistent with prior years, so no changes there. As we reported in prior years, Public Sector Accounting Standards, or PSAS, does not permit the presentation of funds on statements. They are consolidated, however the schedules at the back of the financial statement show the various funds, as Jason has previously mentioned. And as Jason also mentioned, against stealing my thunder, the budget column in the financial statements is the original budget done in May of the previous year, not the amended budget, typically done much later. So what I'd like to do next is walk through two of the statements within your package to illustrate the financial statements highlights of the year. So if we could please turn to Schedule 2.
Yes. Schedule 2 is 37. That's it.
That's it there. And I like this name or title. It's called the Schedule of Operating Operations. And I'm not making that up. So what does the schedule do? It details the operations for the year. You will note that the operating surplus for the year is $1.820 million. And when added to the opening surplus of a little over $2 million, $2.031 million, you'll see there's a total surplus at the end of the year of $3,852,000. Of this, the district has restricted or spoken for in future years $2.765 million. And as well, the district has $167,000 of unfunded accrued employee future benefit liability on the books. And you'll note that that has been reduced or paid down by another $50,000 this year, which is good. This ultimately results in an unrestricted surplus after all restrictions of $1.254 million. So as we've seen over the last several years, the district has again achieved financial results very, very close to the budget. So let's have a look at the revenue, which is up at the top of the schedule. So if we could just please scroll there, perfect. So we're just looking at the very, very top of that slide. And you'll see total actual revenue of $77.07 million. It's the middle column, the bolded column. Oh, yeah, exactly. On a budget of $71.58 million, just to the left there. And that is up from $73.43 spent the prior year. So this 4.9% increase in revenue versus last year is a result of a number of factors. An increased enrollment of 186 FTEs, an increase of 102 FTE students in special ed, the receipt of the transportation grant, the return of the admin savings, which amounted to approximately $348,000, and the $50 per student learning grant, as well as the growth in offshore tuition revenue. So you can see a lot of moving parts between when the budget was originally set up and when we've got our final 12 months of results there in the bold column in the middle. So now let's move to the expense side of things. You will see expenses there, but they're broken out a little differently in Schedule 2B. So if we could forward just a couple more pages. Oh, I think I passed it. Yeah, right there. Okay. So this essentially looks at the same expenses, but breaks them out differently. And what this is called the Schedule of Operating Expense by Object. So this schedule groups all the various functions in the financial statements. For example, a function is something like instruction or maintenance or transportation. And it together groups all the similar expenses within those functions together. For example, it breaks out all the various salaries within all those various functions and shows you what the district spent money on. The first item at the top there you'll see is under salaries is teachers. The 31.7 million, again I'm in the middle column, the bold column at the very top. You'll see the 31.7 million that was spent this year is above the amount spent in the prior year and over annual budget. This is consistent with enrollment increase, an increase in the number of teachers, the modest wage increase received during the year, and it is offset by the always changing staff mix during the year as teachers retire and new teachers come on board. The next item is principals and vice principals. And you'll see that increase this year over both 2016 and over budget. This is consistent with the removal of the management level compensation freeze and the per the regional salary model. Next up, you'll see the next line down is educational assistants. Here you'll also note an increase over last year and budget. Again, consistent with increased enrollment and the increase in the number of special needs students and a wage increase received this past year. You're noticing a theme as we go through here. Support staff salaries, having said that, is below budget and 2016. Although there was a wage increase during the past year, there was an offsetting reduction in the total number of clerical staff. The other professionals category is next. Here you'll see it's above budget, slightly greater than the prior year. Again, consistent with the regional salary model and the addition of an individual late in the year. And the last item I'd like to address with respect to salaries is substitutes. And you'll see there that the 2017 results are spent more than 2016 and more than budget. And that's largely driven by the sick leave experience during the year. Next up is employee benefits. Here you'll see they're less than budget in prior year due to savings in the teacher's pension plan and the extended health plan premiums. And then lastly, we move into services and supplies. Overall, this area is slightly greater than budget and prior year. You'll see that 7.997 was spent on a budget of 7.223. And here are four main fluctuations accounting for the change this year. One, increased costs again this year of running both the dual credit program has resulted in increased costs in this area. But remember, correspondingly, there's an increase in revenue offsetting this. Two, you'll see that student transportation is up $370,000 spent during the year. It's up largely due to the new contract with Cowichan Tribes. Three, more was spent in supplies in learning resources. And four, there was more spent in utilities this year. You'll see 1.243 million was spent than the prior year, really just due to the long, cold winter we all experienced. So overall, you'll see operating expenses this year of 75.18 million on a budget of 72.38 million. So that's the operations of the district.
Darren, I'm sorry, can you just go into what is services again? Included, it went from 86,000 to 370.
That's student transportation. That's the busing.
Sorry. Oh, I see.
It went from 256 to 370.
Thank you.
So again, in summary, as I've stated the last couple of years, actual results closely paralleled budget when looking at all the reasons why things changed between a budget done back in, I guess, May of 2016 versus results at the end of June of 2017. And so again, it resulted this year in a $1.254 million unrestricted surplus on a budget of a little over $72.4 million. And in closing, we as your audit firm would like to thank the district staff, management, and staff for their cooperation and very, very professional approach this past year. Thank you.
Trustees, any questions, auditors? Trustee Schmidt, I can't believe you're silent.
Well, actually, Trustee Hutchins, we started hanging out with these gentlemen at 3 o'clock today. So they've already got my questions.
Mr. St.
I'd like to roll back a couple pages up here to one of the notes, which I think the board would find interesting, which is around the restrictions of the surplus. It's page 33. There it is. The auditors have talked about the surplus being approximately $3.8 million and the restricted portion being 2.7. I think this is a really important note for the board to understand. So when the budget was prepared for this year, $1 million was brought into balance, so that is a restriction. An additional $372,000 was carried over to support the self-funding of the dual distributed learning career programs, ITA. So the revenues they generated, some of that was restricted to put staffing in for this year. You see the various other restrictions there between the BC Education Plan, which has been unspent at $234,000. We had I think we changed this note from career equipment to, it's actually Bill 28 equipment. We'll have to make sure that's corrected. Bill 28 equipment and furniture of $100,000. So within the Bill 28 funds, when we actually got to the point of filling the classes with furniture, we were light on funding and restricted an additional amount there. And another area there, learning resources at $299,000 and student learning grant at $383,000. So there's some big amounts of money there, which are part of our rollovers and our restrictions that are part of that surplus. And just wanted you to be aware of what was in that number, because $2.7 million is quite a large restriction. That's really what I wanted to add.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. I believe you have a recommendation.
The audit committee, prior to this meeting, made a recommendation that the board Education Business Committee recommend the statements to the board. So.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. No items under policy. Trustee Smith.
Sorry, I'm trying to flip back my agenda. Jean is not up. No.
Motion
Sorry,
made.
I was like, what? What do you mean policy? I don't remember anything. I'll scared me.
Motion to adjourn. Trustee DeGroot, Trustee Spilsbury, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen.